In a world brimming with challenges and change, with crises all around us, we need ideas, innovation, and inspiration. Welcome to the Free Market Roadshow 2024, where the pulse of contemporary discussions beats.
So welcome everybody. So welcome to the start of the Free Market Roadshow here in Brussels. I'm very happy to have an excellent panel. So the Free Market Roadshow is a series of conferences in, I think if I counted well, 36 cities in Europe, but also in the United States. Brussels is the first one, and it ends sometime in May. You can check it on the website. As I mentioned, we have two panels. Unfortunately, in the first panel, Boudewijn Boekhart, he's off ill, but he has provided his slides and will provide an article that we'll publish at one point. So yeah, without further ado, I'm very happy to give the word to the Austrian ambassador to Belgium and NATO, Jürgen Meindl.
Thank you. Just try to place it here. Yeah, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, sehr geehrter Präsident Jäger, dear Mrs. Kolm, dear Mr. Cleppe, dear Dr. Heitz. As Austrian ambassador to the Kingdom of Belgium and to NATO, I'm delighted to welcome you here at the Free Market Roadshow in Brussels. I'm grateful that the Free Market Roadshow is starting in Brussels and continuing in 36 cities, I've learned, and I'm very thankful that this is taking place with the support of the Austrian Economic Center and the Friedrich Hayek Institute. In view of the European election in June and the current political situation worldwide, it is a good opportunity to remember Friedrich Hayek. 80 years after the publication of his famous work, The Road to Serfdom, Der Weg zur Knechtschaft, this work has lost none of its significance. Hayek's concern for democracy in a world in which liberal ideas are losing ground should still concern us today. Ladies and gentlemen, the Free Market Roadshow invites us to take a conscious look at the current political and economic situation and its importance. Conference and meetings like today encourage us to ask explicitly what are the conditions and reasons for economic upswing and decline, and what are the consequences in our everyday lives. War, military conflicts, and their security policy consequences certainly have a considerable influence. Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine led to a sharp rise of inflation, particularly in the food and energy sector, and particularly in Austria, by the way. Let me mention one figure. According to estimates by German economic institutes, the war in Ukraine has so far cost Germany around 200 billion euros, both directly and indirectly. The current attacks by the Houthi rebels in the Red Sea are another factor of uncertainty. 12% of the world trade passes through the Red Sea. Around 20,000 ships travel through the Suez Canal every year. However, the largest shipping companies are now bypassing the area. Delivery time and costs are rising. The military conflict in Israel is expanding to an economic level, and it's suddenly taking on a global dimension. The current political mood is shaped by uncertainty, and the world appears to be on the brink for a geopolitical realignment. Maybe the most dangerous times since 1945. How do we adapt to this, especially economically? With supply chains, can we trust according to which standards and values we should react and act? In dealing with such conflicts, normative questions about the role of the state, questions that are certainly also being discussed today. However, it is not only conflicts at interstate level that give rise to search for answers in such questions. The growing influence of private economic players is also reason enough. Elon Musk, probably the world's most influential tech entrepreneur, is having significant impact on how we discuss things which is other X, former Twitter, how we get around Tesla, and how we communicate with each other, Starlink. At the beginning of 2024, more than 5,700 Starlink satellites are orbiting the Earth. This number is set to double. Elon Musk wants to guarantee internet accession on a global scale, and he here has taken on a pioneering role, for sure. Today, more than 70% of all the satellites in space come from private entrepreneurs. The biggest player is, of course, Elon Musk. This, in turn, raises important questions. Should the decision of who is granted internet access and who is not left to a single actor, should the single entrepreneur be allowed to decide about internet according to purpose? The provision or non-provision of Starlink in Ukraine by Elon Musk shows the geopolitical explosive power we have to deal with without destroying a liberal market or democracy. This example should make one thing clear: geopolitical security and the global economic situation are closely linked and mutually dependent. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish you an insightful exchange on this all and other topics, and hope you all enjoy the Free Market Roadshow here in Brussels. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. So then I would like to invite the panel to the floor. So first of all, we have Michael Jäger, who's the taxpayer, the director of the Taxpayer Associations of Europe, and also involved with the Taxpayer Association in Germany. Of course, timely debate, Germany going to upheaval economically, and even considering to reduce its corporate tax rate, but we can listen to your thoughts about that. And after that, we'll have Chris Butler, who's the executive director of Americans for Tax Reform and also of the Tholos Foundation, one of the partners for this event. So please, Michael. Oh, of course, first we'll let Barbara Kolm, who's the director of the organizer of the roadshow, the Austrian Economic Center, will give you the word.
Thank you very much, Peter. Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellency, Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much for your kind opening remarks, and especially for mentioning Hayek. After all, next week we have the 80th anniversary that you already mentioned of Hayek's Road to Serfdom, the first publication. And as Magister Meindl, our ambassador, already said, it is more than timely to take up what Professor Hayek had mentioned, and that all his warnings against totalitarian regimes from both sides of the spectrum are endangering not only our continent, but the world. And I think it's about economic freedom and individuality that we need to defend and that we will have to put at the forefront. This was the reason why we founded the Free Market Roadshow 17 years ago. Back then, it was a total different time. It was actually 1 year prior to the so-called GFC, the global financial crisis, which had turned our financial world upside down and our markets, and the consequences thereof we still face. And I'm very glad and that we will discuss this in both our panels. And I would like to hand over to Michael Jäger and then to Chris Butler. And also, without further ado, this would not be possible with our partners, both from the global side, but also local partners. And thanks, Peter, for hosting us here at the Brussels Report. I can only invite you to follow that and to look into their publications. But there are many other publications, and many of them are sitting here, also here on the table, that are worth reading. And after all, it's a dissemination and a division of labor that we preach as libertarians, and this means that we take the best. And without further ado, the floor is open. Michael, please start. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Barbara, also for inventing this brilliant idea of the Free Market Roadshow. And when we started, we wanted to train Eastern countries to think about market economy. Today we have to teach even Germany. We have to teach the Western countries too, and that's very interesting. And it's a pity that we lose the spirit of market economy, and we are more and more in danger to have more centralization. And the topic of today is regulation out of control. Yes, it is. So that's very short, and I want to explain a little bit. You can get my presentation later. I think it's easier. I want to go through and want to discuss with you several topics, and if you have some questions, it's better in a dialogue. But to see what happened in the last years under this Commission von der Leyen, as a German, I have to say it was not really fruitful for entrepreneurs and for market economy. So, and EU Commission is planning more and more initiatives. So if you look back, what happened in the last years. So we had no breeze after COVID, and now with Ukrainian war, still the speed of regulation has increased. So if it's taxonomy, Green Deal, green financing, sustainability reporting directive, supply chain act, we succeeded now to stop it. But be sure if the new Commission under presidency of von der Leyen will have a restart on this topic, a social taxonomy, eco-design directive, energy performance of building directive, also some success of our network lobby work that it's now a national topic, but if it's a national topic like in Germany, it's a high risk that things will become even worse than by the regulation of the European Union, because with our government, you never know what will happen. So Critical Raw Material Act, Net Zero Industry Act, Renewable Energy Directive 3, and all these things, harmonization of driver's license. So in each field of human life, of economy, we will have regulation. And I think that's not in the spirit of the founders of the European Union. So it seems that the European Union wants to regulate everything down to the smallest detail. And I think this will not work. And this regulation, for sure, you will find always good arguments. You have to fight the climate change. You have to do something against unemployment. We have to do something that smaller countries become more competitive. But in reality, it's a centralized policy and it's more regulation. And it will not lead to more growth. Finally, it leads to more centralized control. And I'm in favor of market economy. Hayek, for me, is Schumpeter. It's the opposite of a market economy. For sure, we need rules, but we do not need a complete regulation where we have no more space. And also for Europe, we lose to be competitive to US and other countries. So that's really a big problem. So what we ask for with the Taxpayers movement is a renaissance of values, a return to the idea of the fathers of the European Union. So the principle of subsidiarity, a lost principle. So first, each village, country should be responsible itself and not to regulate everything on the European level, and also securing growth, prosperity and peace. I think it's not a project to secure growth, and our very short mission is more Europe where it's necessary, less Europe where it's possible. If it comes to defense, for instance, migration, for sure, we need a common approach. But if it comes to market economy topics, it's good to have competition, and also if you have more rules and more regulation, you need more control. You need more bureaucracy, and then you have also sanctions. What happens if someone is not fulfilling it? So you need to have a really more control, and this lead finally to increasing costs to corporates, to people, to entrepreneurs, and I think that's not good without any added value. So you have to think about, if you have a regulation. Many people were not happy with Jean-Claude Juncker, but Jean-Claude always said, if I spend €1 of the European Union money, you should have a benefit of €1. And the question is, what is the added value to these regulations? How is the impact to growth? Is it better for our growing economy to market or not? So, and I'm afraid that we have a loss of entrepreneurial freedom, a loss of individual freedom, finally, if it comes to electric mobility, all these topics, if you're not allowed to drive. In Germany, we discuss public transport to be the only solution. And if you look now with strike in Germany, Thursday, railway, for sure, maybe the Greens are happy if the flights are not flying, but also that's a transport topic. So we have a high risk that you lose individual mobility. And for us, and for me personally, it's a human right. Individual mobility is a human right. It should not be stopped and regulated by European Union, because it will be a high risk even for the poor people to lose the mobility. If we as entrepreneurs, I'm not only president of the Taxpayers and CEO of the Economic Senate, I'm also entrepreneur. I can pay the bill. If increasing cost, the left road is free on the highway, it could be good for me because I have less cars on the road. But in reality, the poor people, students, cannot buy the cars. If you look to the electric car market, it's a limited market yet. So we have no market solutions, no market offer and supply. So demand and supply, and that's really a big problem. And I'm afraid that if von der Leyen, she will be elected, for sure she is the only candidate of the EPP. I'm not sure if the Commission learned the lesson the last 2 years, what was happening. And I hope so. For sure, we had now countries like Austria and also libertarian Wissing, who disagreed on the political proposals. But I think it will not be the final solution. And in the long run, we cannot think it's enough if one country starts to impact assessment, to look what is the impact out of such a regulation. So I think we have a high risk if all the projects by the European Commission will come now. You need more money. You need more money. And remember, when we had the next generation budget, von der Leyen promised is a one single situation to fight the impact of COVID. Now we have a big discussion for defense, to fight the climate change. We need more new budgets. And who can pay for it? How to pay for it? And if you look the increasing tax rates, increasing interest rates now, if you look only to this 800 billion indebtedness, if you have 2%, it's 16 billion interest rate. If it's 3%, you have 24 billion. Yesterday at the event of the Bavarian, at the Bavarian representation, Markus Ferber said, he was one of the European parliamentarians. He said, listen, you have to look on the interest rates when we had this indebtedness. In Germany, 2022, we had 3.9 billion interest rate, federal level. Last year, we had 39 billion interest rates. This is burning the possibility to invest. Increasing payments for interests, for credits is really a wrong approach. And if you want to have a look, you can go to our webpage. We have this 10 taxpayers commandments, like in the Bible. It's taxpayers-europe.org. You will find it. We launched it in January, and we have some demands. So we sustainable EU fiscal policy, return to budgetary discipline. It should not be a standard that you have always increasing debts. We need more discipline. So reduction of debts by law. Look to Germany. We have more tax revenues, but we have increasing debts. As an entrepreneur, you cannot always increase your indebtedness. So it should be a market solution. And also, we do not want new taxes, no tax increase, because if we allow European Commission to create new budgets, financed by indebtedness, someone has to pay the bill. And if they talk about own resources, it's nothing else than taxes. Someone has to pay more. So we want to reduce the tax burden to set the market forces free. And that's really, we have solutions like in Estonia, reinvested profits. As long as you keep the money working in your corporate, it's tax-free, it's not taxed. It's a very good approach. It could be for startups a solution for other countries, but Commission dislikes it. So, I think it would be better than subsidies if you do not tax startups. And also we have to reduce bureaucracy for sure. And what we demand really impact assessment for all projects. If you read now impact assessments, no costs, it just means the cost of administration. But you have really, with artificial intelligence, with the data you can really calculate the impact on corporates too. And I think it should always be an added value, not only added costs to society and to corporates. And that's also important. If we have now a minimum of taxation, 15% for corporates, we should also talk about a maximum taxation. What is the maximum taxation for corporate? What should be allowed? Not only to say 15, because now we create a tax cartel. So it was not Trump, it was Biden implementing this tax cartel with 15%. And if now the finance ministers agree, let's do 18%, let's do 20%. So it's against the market forces and against what corporates could gain. So I think we need also a discussion. And we have two important projects. One is we want to fight EU bureaucracy. Von der Leyen promised 25% less bureaucracy, but only in reporting. We want really a cut down of 25% at least of EU bureaucracy, and that's important. And also what we did now, we have founded a new research institute. It's European Institute for Public Finance, just to have an independent new institute. It's supported by the University for Applied Science of Munich, so they are completely independent in research, but we need market-oriented institutes. So it's not from the left wing or the Greens or other players. It's really neutral, so that we examine projects and we will come out with the first idea how to make a fair financing of the European Union. And we are looking now for new projects just to get an idea and to get own paper, own research, independent research on different topics. That's all for the moment. Maybe I add, because you asked the tax cut idea for corporates in Germany, it's a lie. It's still a lie. So we have a total tax pressure, 30% for corporates, okay? If it's not individual, like mine, for instance. I have my individual tax rate, it's 42 plus 3 plus solidarity surcharge. Corporates have around 30%, 15% corporate income tax, and the so-called Gewerbesteuer trade tax, around 15%. And if Scholz is saying, and Habeck is saying we have to reduce corporate tax, it means that the money of the villages, the cities is touched, because these are own resources of the villages on the communal level. So they cannot decide on it. So you need a compensation on the other hand. So someone has to transfer money from the government or from the countries to the cities, to the villages. Otherwise you cannot reduce the tax rate. So it's a lie, it's a propaganda. It's not possible, because until today, the association of the cities and the village is disagreeing, because they say, listen, if we do not have a compensation, we do not accept it, because it's own resources. They have only some own resources on this level, and it's a really important amount for them. So if we talk about cutting tax, corporate income tax, it's a part of somebody else. We have a minimum taxation, 15%, there we can do nothing, or we reduce the minimum tax rate worldwide. So that's the truth. That's why I'm in favor of markets. For sure, if you have only monopolists or oligopole, they have a better position. And the big player can, if you have a regulation, a big player can compensate it much easier than small and medium entrepreneurs. But what I dislike with the taxpayers, and also as a private economist, with my background of my studies, I do not want to say, listen, these are the good players, the small and medium entrepreneurs, these are the bad guys, the big players. It's not clever. So we need a smart regulation for both. For sure we need some rules, but if you look to Digital Service Act and others, what is the European Union doing? For sure we have big US players, we have players in China, we have more regulation. Does this lead to innovation in Europe? That we have more supply? No. It's just to hinder competition, and I'm in favor of markets. If you have a better situation, like in soccer, now Leverkusen is running for the championship in Germany, it's good. I'm a fan of FC Bayern. That's market. That's a market thing. They are better, they win. And so we should do much more to think about the market potential and how to bring people into labor and how to find solutions. And I want to end with my vision, more Europe where it's necessary. Let's think about topics where we need a more common approach and where we can have less Europe. And I'm in favor of subsidiarity. I'm in favor of market solutions. And that's good. I'm in favor of competition. So if you want to harmonize, I'm an enemy. So let's say it like directly, I'm in favor of competition. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. The topic of the panel today is EU regulation out of control? And I think that the answer is yes. And there's an important way that we can see empirically that that's the case. When I was at an EPP conference in 2015, I guess it was, and I was talking to a number of MEPs around the lunch table, and the question was, why is it that the top 5 companies in America are less than 20 years old, and the top 5 companies in Europe are more than 100 years old? And the answer is the regulatory environment in Europe, quite simply. Capital markets have some effect on this. There's a reciprocal relationship between those two. And it was a major point of that conference at the time to try to figure out, among some of the people there, to try to figure out how to address this problem. But unfortunately, it's gotten worse. The regulatory environment is even now, that is emanating from Europe, is even now extending beyond the borders of Europe and is negatively affecting innovation really around the world. His Excellency talked about Elon Musk, Starlink, things like this. And so a lot of those things are really going to be put in danger by a number of the measures that have been put in place. I wanted to just highlight a couple of those today. The Digital Markets Act and Digital Services Act, which I think a lot of people are familiar with in this room. Just yesterday, for example, the Commission ruled that Apple will be subject to a fine of $1.84 billion. A lot of people probably saw, following a long project of lobbying on behalf of Spotify. But if you're not familiar with these two acts, the Digital Markets Act is primarily focused on what the act terms gatekeepers. Am I not? There you go. Oh, okay. The Digital Markets Act is primarily focused on what it terms gatekeepers, that is, large, successful enterprises that are deemed to have some sort of role in what other people do. This is what happens when people are successful, right? I mean, people are gatekeepers in the fact that they work with their clients, their businesses, their end users, and so they provide a service. You know, if you go to a shop, the shopkeeper is a gatekeeper for a bread that you buy at a bakery, for example. I mean, he's a gatekeeper. But anyway, the gatekeeper is this nefarious term which describes these large entities that are really just successful businesses. And then the Digital Services Act is in some ways even more onerous because it's primarily focused on content. It's primarily focused on fighting disinformation and harmful information. And of course, controlling the flow of information is an impediment to liberty that is not going to just have negative effects on innovation, as we've already been seeing, but it's also going to have negative effects on human rights. So I'll just talk a little bit about a couple of these. The DMA, speaking first, was first proposed in 2020 and was endorsed by the European Parliament and the Commission in 2022. But since May of 2023, it began applying to prospective companies. The targeted gatekeepers include search, travel booking, app stores, shopping, messaging services. And so far, we've seen targeting and designation as gatekeepers of Google Shopping, Google Maps, the App Store, Google Play, Amazon Marketplace, YouTube, with Twitter, X now, I guess. Very hard to adjust to that. And Booking, both of those are pending. The Spotify ruling in particular hinges on one of the mandates of the DMA, which is to allow businesses to contract with customers or other businesses outside of the platform in question. So in the case of Apple and Spotify, what has happened is that Apple, of course, imposes a fee on people that buy or sell things through its app store, through its marketplace. Just like if you were to go to an individual shop, they might impose some tariff on something that's sold in the shop. Apple's quite high, but then again, they have a pretty good product. But the interesting thing about Spotify in this case is that Spotify doesn't pay any of that. Spotify doesn't pay Apple anything, because Spotify has decided to opt out of that and force everybody to just go online to the website and buy this and subscribe to Spotify. If you have a Kindle and read on Amazon Kindle, for example, they do the same thing. You can't buy a book on the App Store through Apple because they don't want to pay the fee, which makes sense. They just send everybody to the website. And by the way, that's exactly what everybody would be doing if it weren't for Apple inventing what they invented, right? So you simply choose not to invent, or you simply choose not to use the product that they've invented, which seems to make a lot of sense. Instead of you taking the product that somebody invented and forcing them to give it away for free or something like that. It's not, these kinds of things are never going to facilitate more Apples developing, more Facebooks developing, more Metas developing, more Googles developing. They're not going to come into existence out of this. But what you said about Adam Smith is really especially true here, because only these large entities are going to have the ability to go through and comply with these regulations. There's going to be this reciprocal relationship, and we're seeing it with Spotify right now, right? They met 65 times over the last 2 years with the European Commission over this issue. And they control 56% of the music business in Europe. So this idea of regulatory capture is really going to be tight here, and we're going to have an ossification of the entire industry, and we're going to really see innovation suffer as a result. I think it's really important to ask. So, from a European perspective, the problem may be why there's too many American tech giants. But I think the first thing we ought to do is say why, right? Why are there too many American tech giants and not enough European tech giants? Instead of just picking up a hammer, right? Let's think about the situation and think how we can create an environment that is going to spur this growth and development. What is the capital that needs to be available, and how do capital markets get better freed up to allow the capital to flow? How do we create a paradise, right? Religion needs both a hell and a heaven to succeed, right? So if a small startup company knows, or a big startup company knows, that they're never going to be able to achieve real profit, real success, real dominance, because as soon as they reach a point where they're going to have any kind of dominance or market power of any kind, they're just going to come under the crushing burden of government. They're not even going to start up in the first place. If you're going to spur any kind of small startups or new entities, they're just going to be sort of secondary vendors or players or suppliers to some of these larger entities. And you might get that, but you're not going to get true, real creativity that's going to truly permanently change the marketplace. The way that both the Digital Services Act and the Digital Markets Act work is to rearrange the business models that are in place, because it forces data to be given up to third parties. It impedes in the relationship between these two, and doesn't allow monetization the way it's developed. So what's going to happen is something new is going to happen in order to shift some of these burdens around. Will it work? We don't know. We're just sort of rolling the dice because the government has decided that the way it works up till now has not been acceptable. So we're going to roll the dice and see if something better winds up. But it's sort of a problem or a solution in search of a problem, because consumers are really happy. They've got really cool things going on. The problems that we're looking to address resulted in the first place from an over-regulatory environment. And an over-regulatory environment isn't going to help to fix them. Let me just mention a few of the things that the Digital Services Act does, because I think people might tend to conflate the two. But it mandates that platforms such as those that I mentioned, Google, Twitter, Wikipedia even, analyze and assess the systemic risks related to illegal content, freedom of expression, pluralism, discrimination, consumer protection, children's rights, public security, gender-based violence, mental and physical well-being. And furthermore, it mandates or provides the authority to mandate that the Commission adapt the functioning of the systems and algorithms related to these goals. So if we imagine that the Commission has decided that if a publisher gets too big, it's going to make sure it's not publishing something that they don't like, or that if anybody is creating art that they don't like, they're going to make sure that they don't create too much art or promote too many things. I mean, it raises the question even that, suppose on Twitter you have a tweet that says, or X, you have a, Zeet, that you think that DSA is a lousy idea and will result in massively constrained freedom of expression. This tweet goes viral and propagates throughout the whole world. Could that itself be a violation of the DSA? Can criticism of the DSA be a violation of the DSA? We don't know. But you could certainly make the argument, if you're a particular commissioner, that that degrading the DMA will result in increased gender-based violence or discrimination. Not to mention that all these things are in conflict, right? So who decides between whether freedom of expression wins out over discrimination that day, or that particular issue, whether mental well-being is more important than consumer protection? I mean, these things are going to be fought out every day, but the place they ought to be fought out is in the marketplace. I mean, we've seen that governmental entities are slow moving. They can't handle regulation of, they can't handle minute regulation of technological and economic matters. And now we want to have them regulating speech. It's really disturbing. There's also an important risk here in that, I mean, I think a lot of times people have depended on the United States a little bit to generate some of this kind of innovation and to create some of the protections on freedom of speech, for example, or expression, or exert influence on behalf of a lot of the world. But I have bad news in that some of this stuff is eroding, these protections are eroding in the United States too, and potentially in a way that is counterproductive to things like the DSA and DMA. And I'll just give you one example, which is that Adrian Smith, the United States chairman of the Ways and Means Committee in the House of Representatives, introduced a bill last Congress to increase tax rates for companies that are inside countries that are that have acceded to Pillar 2, right? Or tax harmonization more generally or more broadly, which is a very dumb and destructive idea, and we would fight it continuously. But we've also seen examples in Texas, Florida, one or two other states in the United States, where they've imposed sanctions on these tech companies for suppressing speech that they don't like. So you're going to be in a situation where you have the commission telling Twitter or Google, we don't like the way your algorithms prioritize this particular speech versus this particular speech. And then you're going to have states in the US telling these same companies, well, you're not able to ban this particular person because it runs afoul of our investigation of what the First Amendment says in these different circumstances. And you're going to have this retaliatory cycle that's spinning up between these two countries. And we already have problems enough in free trade on the right side of the political spectrum in the United States. This is just going to further exacerbate things. And so I really want to caution folks on these. I think we need to look at how to take step backs to create freedom. I mean, it doesn't matter how smart East Germany was, the Trabant was never going to be better than BMW. You know, you have to allow freedom to come in and make these decisions to allocate resources. Let me just mention one more thing, which is the digital services tax. We continue to be worried about digital services tax here as well, along these same lines, especially as we see some of the talks degrading at the OECD on this matter. That would be a further impediment on a lot of these different issues of, especially in cross-border trade, technological innovation. And so we'd like to also kind of keep our watch up on that. Thank you.
The Commission is not an enemy, so we have to make proposals. I think it's a very good idea, and I think transparency, and that's a key. That's what we demand since years, and also what we try now, facts-based discussion. So we replace in Germany by facts by ideology. So it's our discussion, political decisions are driven by ideology, and we have really to point it out. Maybe that's also something what Commission should do to these neutral things. So if you look to the mobility discussion, we have water power and electric cars. It was a decision. But we are hindering innovation. We are in favor of markets, so we do not want to forbid things. If we have future solutions helping us, like synthetic fuels, carbon neutral, carbon dioxide neutral, we should do everything for research and development. So this is a really important thing, and more entrepreneurs, not less entrepreneurs. Generation Z, by the way, they want to be employers because they want freedom. That's the only thing what was maybe good for the new generation. I don't know if they really understand what is an entrepreneur, but they don't want to be an employee because they want to be free. But that's a good start. But I think they have no economic background. That's the problem. But I think that could be a solution together. That's our offer, not against, to fighting for the best, discussing the best solution, open discussion. Another ideological discussion, so fact-based. That's why we formed this new institute. We want to support and to provide facts.
Maybe I'll just close with an apology, which is that in the terms of regulatory expansion, we are in the United States responsible for you all having passed the European Net Zero Industry Act since when we passed the Inflation Reduction Act, of course, one of the worst named things of all time, in the United States with our $1.2 trillion of green energy subsidies. And helpfully, Korea, Japan, and the EU all called to say, this is horrible, you can't do this. You can't fund US industry like this, it's not fair. And Joe Biden's response was, well, you should just do the same thing, and we'll help you figure out how to do it. And so as a result, we got the European Net Zero Industry Act. So sorry about that.
It's also competition.
Yeah, that's right.
Use this experience to fuel your aspirations. Be part of the change. Let's explore, learn, and grow together. Secure your spot now.